Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Joe the Juggernaut Joyce, he keeps rolling on. He's beaten Ivica Bacurin in the first round to rack up his 5th career win. So he remains unbeaten here, and this fight, it was on short notice, Bacurin stepping in after a pull-out by Richard Lartey. But actually, it wasn't much chop, and it wasn't Joyce's fault, because he was looking pretty good in there. He was moving around the ring, looking good, looking fluid, more fluid than we have seen him in some other fights. So what he's been doing in camp has been obviously working. But the first time that he was able to get close to Bacurin, because Bacurin was on his bicycle that whole first round, Bacurin went down. And he was actually hit with what looked to be a couple of glancing blows to the top or the back of the head. And he went down like a sack of spuds, and somewhat dramatically given the circumstances. And he was claiming on the ground that he was hit by some rabbit punches, but the referee ignored it, was having none of that, and he counted him out. And there was more than a minute still left in the round. And, you know, from what I saw and obviously what the crowd saw, very disappointing end. And naturally the crowd was booing. They didn't like what they had seen. And when they showed the replay, I thought, okay, yeah, Bacurin, he was looking for a way out. He didn't want that work. They were glancing blows. So Ivica Bacurin, he certainly does have a career in acting if he wants one, judging by that display. But okay, so Joe Joyce, he's racked up his 5th career win. After the fight, he stated he'd had a good camp in Kazakhstan. He'd learned a bit more, you know, developing his movement and such, which we did see in the fight. And then he was cut off in short order, and they went to the replays again, because David Haye was there as well. And those replays, it was almost embarrassing because it was clear. I mean, it almost didn't look like the punches landed. They barely clipped Bacurin. And David Haye, he was insistent that, you know, those glancing blows were, as he sort of said, crisp shots. Haye is going to say what he has to because he's the promoter. He doesn't want people walking away unhappy, and it wasn't exactly a tidy ending. But Haye, he also tried to talk up Bacurin in the sense that he said he was no joke, that he'd gone rounds with Tony Bellew and Dillian Whyte, and look what Joe Joyce had done to Bacurin. But judging on that performance, Bacurin, he didn't want to be in there, so I don't know if the comparisons are that valid. But interestingly, the interviewer, he raised the issue that there had been approximately 10 opponents who'd pulled out for the fight. So at some stage they'd sort of agreed to it and then decided no, they didn't want to fight Joe Joyce. I mean, there was no mention of who they were, but we do know that one was the Ghanaian Richard Lartey, who'd been confirmed but then pulled out this week for undisclosed reasons. And I'd note he also pulled out of a fight with Junior Farr. This was a couple of weeks ago, and that was to take the Joe Joyce fight. So who knows what Richard Lartey is doing now, but if he keeps pulling out, he's not going to get any fights against anyone outside of Ghana. But David Haye, he spoke of the what next for Joyce, saying he wanted to speak to Peter Fury to try arrange for Joyce to take on Hughie Fury for Fury's English title, which he won recently. But given Peter Fury has previously stated in a pretty much categoric manner that they are not interested in fighting Joe Joyce, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a short conversation. Haye can try put that pressure on publicly, but I do not think it's going to work. But what can we take from Joe Joyce's first round KO of Bacurin? Not a lot, because most of it we sort of saw Joyce chasing Bacurin around the ring. Bacurin was on his bike the whole time and essentially laid down the first time that Joyce got close to him. But in saying that, Joyce, his movement looked pretty good. He did look a bit more fluid in there compared to some of his recent performances, so that's a plus. And I guess we can just chalk it up as a stay busy fight, which it was pretty much only ever going to be that to some extent. You know, the event was announced at relatively short notice, and they only confirmed Lartey a week or so ago, and then Bacurin obviously 2 days before the fight. So, you know, from that view, you know, Joyce, he's in the ring, 5-0 now. And I do actually think they're going to find it hard, and I've spoken about this before, to get meaningful opponents for Joe Joyce, unless they drastically overpay. And even then, a lot of those contenders that are on the way up, that are half decent, they're probably going to want to swerve him. They're going to want nothing to do with this big 6'6", 250-pound Brit. But, you know, 5-0, so they're going to have to keep wheeling him out every sort of, you know, couple of months. keep him active. I mean, we may see him fight another, 2, 3, 4 times this year. They've got to keep him active, build that record. They've got to get him into a sanctioning body. They've got to get him into some sort of eliminator situation eventually, because without that sort of route, potentially, he might be fighting a lot of guys he doesn't want to because no one will take him on. We'll have to see where this goes. But Joe Joyce, he is looking like a good prospect or a good contender in the offing. But at 32, the time is sort of running out a little bit and he wants to get cracking. But it's almost like he's sort of running in mud because the opponents, well, a lot of guys just won't want that work. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.